time.
Well, I always leave it the beginning of the video open for staff business. But if we just
We don't
roll
like,
into
we don't like business though.
huh?
Business is boring.
Oh, I mean, our business is the macro, right? So, I mean, whatever, but so we're talking about market conditions, but the market conditions are what everybody finds really interesting. So I should just hit record when we start. And then if we say we want to have a biz matter discussed, then pause the recording, right? Rather than just do this what I do every time, which is all of a sudden we get a really interesting conversation going. And I've forgotten to hit record. So anyway, Luke and Brandon and Martin were just making a point about what the right. So Luke, could you repeat what you were saying about?
Oh yeah, just the nature of the platform Twitter, the way it works, the character limitations and the short burst comments and stuff like that, is it compresses towards parsimony, which favors argument, which favors the right form of discourse. If not for the algorithm, the right would be winning on Twitter. But right now the left is winning on Twitter. The algorithm pushes attention rather than.
So in time, they have a lot of control, but over time, we can win. Simply because we'll gravitate on what we call. See, when we say parsimony, we know this means a lot of things, right? So the audience doesn't always know that. So we're going to grad toward parsimony in truth and utility. Right?
Well,
And
I don't think it's just parsimony because of the character limit. I think we win on every platform where we are allowed.
Yes, we do.
I mean, right in general.
That's why they have to ban us, right?
Yes.
The problem here is they seek attention and conflict generation as opposed to resolution. We practice the law. I suppose that's why we see it, but there's not a social media platform that should exist that doesn't tilt towards resolution and attention off. Meaning the more your eyes are on the platform, that's only good for the advertiser. It's not good for you.
So this goes to the fact that the left uses chaos and undermining against truth, and the right uses truth and order against chaos.
We should be able to rally to truth, but that looks like racism.
Well, I mean, racism is just the newest form of Marxism, and Marxism is just the newest form of female antisocial behavior. So,
well, they go, look, he's generating more conflict than we could possibly. Let's pile in on him.
Right.
But it's not true. They're lying.
This is why you can't make falsehoods sacred.
Well, they think they can control categorization with labeling.
Correct.
Well, but they can among themselves because consistency isn't. See, they're seeking emotional consistency over time. In other words, attention and emotionality. So they're looking for emotional consistency. We're not. We're looking for intellectual consistency.
Yeah, but in order to produce it verbally, now they have to change the definitions of words in real time.
Well, I mean,
that's exposure.
This is what we do, right? We say all language is measurements, and in order to do that, we demonstrate that through adversarial competition by disambiguation, using serialization, enumeration, serialization, and operationalism. So we create systems of measurement specifically to prevent their misuse of the measurements. So what they do is they use the fact that people are relatively ignorant to put their finger on the scale in order to emotionally load and frame circumstances. And in doing so, they do it by changing the meaning of words.
No, well, they're doing it to ambiguate crime.
Yes.
To squeeze the spectrum together so that you think some things are just as bad as others, where we need operational precision in the law.
Yeah, I don't know where you guys are on this, because that's this is the argument is we haven't been wrong in predicting the outcome of every progressive change from marriage to race, etc. The one that seems to have overwhelmed women is pedophilia. They have the left's basic structure, which we know now, is to undermine demand for responsibility in the form of self-regulation.
It's because they're framing sexualization, like being sexual as a being as maturity. That's a frame they're selling to children, that entering into sexual relations denotes you an adult.
I see. I didn't think of it that way.
It's a
I just-
bypassing of development.
It's a maturity. We have a maturity crisis. We do not have adults here. They do not exist.
Okay, I didn't make that connection. I just saw it as manipulation and predation. But what
Right.
you're saying is they can bypass
It's behavioral maladaptation.
maladaptation, so they can bypass responsibility responsibility.
And then they wield it early in a coercive fashion against men who are not capable of competing in that environment.
So is this just the production of emotional satisfaction?
Physical satisfaction.
Infantile.
Right.
It's infantilism.
Sure.
I usually mean that intellectually, but you mean all emotionally, psychologically, and
Yeah.
emotionally.
Developmentally, all the ways. Yeah.
I mean, when I say that it's child abuse to do what they're doing to children, that they are abusing children.
Of course
That's
they-
that's what I mean.
Yeah, the problem is that you abuse enough children, it abuses society.
Of course, of course. Well, they're abusing
so
each other. That's the thing. And then they're going to need the help, and the government super systems are going to offer the help. And they don't see that that is the cycle that they're inside of.
So the pathway is that the cognitively feminine is reducible to a failure of maturity that we tolerate. The question is, why do we tolerate it from women? Because when we tolerate it from them and we don't institutionally defend against it, we get we get what we see, which is the continuous advancement of equality through infantilization. In other words, the common denominator is poverty. The common denominator is infantilization.
Yeah, they can't make us all women, so they're making us all children.
They're making us all children.
They are trying to make us all women, so
They are. It's just they're going to fail, and they're going to try to make us all children. We will fall for that. We are falling for that. We play video games more than we do real life.
Okay. I see what I've been doing wrong that you're seeing. First I think about the political, right? I mean, it's the macro result of micro behaviors is what I look at, and this sometimes makes me fail to see what you guys see, which is
It's only that I'm focusing on children and abuse because you don't.
yes.
It's not your
It's
job. I focus on mothers. Like, you have to steward children. We don't produce innocence anymore. Innocence has to come along with immaturity. And if you don't have those, like in combination, you are in trouble, big
Say
trouble.
that again. There was something good in there. Say that again. Innocence.
Innocence and immaturity have to come together. They come together. You can't have immaturity without innocence.
I don't get that, because I'd see. What do you mean innocence then? How are you defining innocence?
Innocence. It's a truth claim that you're innocent from doing harm, like acting the way that you act as a child. You have a claim of innocence against this place because you are immature and unable to steward yourself forward in a fashion that's civilized. That's why you have adults that literally have to view you as property. We have to steward people out of this frame. It's a real frame, and you inhabit it as a child.
Oh, I see. So the more adult, the more trust is required. The more infantile, the least trust is required.
And we look up to people who are
Trust is
not
required.
trustworthy.
Wait a minute, let me continue with it. The more trust that's required, the more predictability is required. The more predictive required is, the more knowledge is required. The more knowledge is required, the more systematizing is required. So literally, their ability, their immaturity leaves them in a state of empathizing, which they're lionizing. They're lionizing, empathizing, which is a it's a pre-rational way of looking at the world, absent the capacity to systematize. So okay, I got it. I'm just doing my thing. How do I construct what you think from first principles?
Let me deliver everyone to the present then. If you learn to systematize against the future that's coming, you're going to prefer empathizing.
I can connect this to Abrahamism. Instead of letting you make moral judgments independently, you just follow a set of commands so that you don't have to think.
So this is mothering, right? The mother is trying to recite a bunch of commands to relieve herself the responsibility of continuous.
It's mothering with a bend to control the child in the future, as opposed to
Creating independence.
as an agent.
Right. Which is not actual mothering.
Correct.
Analyzing.
Which isn't, again, it isn't mothering. It's not even part of the panoply. Like, you can teach your child that its emotions aren't there to fight them, but inform them. And then how to articulate that information. And we don't do that with children. And they don't do that in the schools.
So they're saying this is part, the whole, you need to bring out your intrinsic nature, free of oppression, is just another positive assertion of the negative intuition to be free of the burden from self and other regulation. So I'm always saying the female mind is evading responsibility for the private and common, leaving everything to self-satisfaction. They're trying to, it's basically disorder. And so in other words, the negative female aspect is
I
that.
would say that is the mind of a child. I think
Right.
That is the
Yeah,
mind.
and I disagree that that's
it's the mind of a child as well.
Yeah.
But it would make that differentiation.
Luke,
that's the thing. We have not seen a fully developed female in generations, so we don't know
yeah,
what the
I'm
female
sorry.
mind is doing. Undeveloped, childish, feminine mind, but it's not a matter of it being female; it's a matter of it being childish.
Well, that's not a new thing. That was the norm, always has been. We didn't have different expectations from women. It was the norm that they followed commands from their fathers and their husbands.
Yes, that's true.
I'm trying to think if there's a root of truth in what Luke is saying, is that infantilization, the general process of infantilization is sex independent. That's the face of the coin, the positiva. The negativa is that we demonstrate infantilization differently by sex. And so the empathizing, systematizing, empathizing, manipulating, inconsistency versus systematizing, force systematizing.
Dads withdraw.
Right. You just give up, right? Because it's just
Withdraw. Well, the courts force dads out of people's lives, and so do mothers now. I'm not trying to demonize dads, but like what we do is not infantilize. We withdraw. We're not there.
yes.
Stake as a father, as a parent.
So this goes back to, how did you start this? This goes back to, we're trying to restore every man a sheriff, which is the ancient, our prehistoric incentive push responsibility as far down so we can have as many peers as possible to compensate for our small numbers.
And I'm trying to get across the point to people that families is the optimal condition. We don't have enough children. If you have enough children, you realize you got to make some of them mature to raise the next few.
And think about all the things we use that everyman phrase for, right? Every man a sheriff, every man a judge, every man a rifleman, every man a decider, every man a statesman. We can clump all those together by saying every man a father. We can capture all of those traits. We don't have the same path written out.
I absolutely love how you go this direction every time. Absolutely love it, because I don't have to. No, but because it's personal rather than political. And I know that what the world wants from us almost always is the personal. And I always say, but that's not what I do. I do the political. I do the rules at the end. You guys want to know what to do within the rules. That's not what I do, right?
Right.
And I have no intention of doing that because I don't claim to be competent to do that.
Well, we ought to be supporting each other, not mimicking each other. So
Yes.
but the point is we haven't framed that same set of criteria for the mother. We've done so for the father.
I see. But then saying that there is a good is a violation of my selfishness. That is therefore oppression. Adulting is oppression. I want to stay a child, an irresponsible, emotionally whimsical, self-gratifying child. I can't watch. I don't know how these these fucking guys that do the manosphere videos every day. There's like 20 of them now, that are pretty good at it. They're starting to get cross repetitiveness, but the guys who've been doing it now for years, they're really fucking good at it. And it just disturbs me if I watch more than a couple of them, because it's so obvious what's going on is these aren't women, they're children.
They're getting attention by treating the women as children.
Yeah.
Obviously. Well, because it's attention getting, and you shouldn't have women that express as children, and dealing with them as children is the right way to deal with them as well.
I mean, we should be spanking these women. That sounds really interesting, doesn't it? See, you didn't, you knew, I knew I had to go somewhere.
I just know how many YouTube channels would crop up. So you might do data in backwards. I do what happens and forwards.
It's like the slap in the face thing needs to be back. There's no need for beating, but the whole, no, that's not okay. You crossed a line, right? And therefore, though, I'm going to cross my line. Well, your line is all this projection and undermining shit. Okay, well, if you cross the line into attacking me, into that kind of warfare against me, I'm going to express the male means against you. If we went back to slapping them every time they did it, it'd end tomorrow. Because the men aren't going to put up with that.
Well, firstly, those are straightforward criteria, meaning that's a decidable thing in the present. People don't realize that. I usually use the example of being on the side of your marriage, like someone offends your wife at a bar and you should hit them. As you should hit them.
Yes.
Right, because he offended your marriage, and your marriage is a property, a sacred one.
Yeah.
How do you figure you're going to?
What does marriage? We think marriage is for us. Marriage is for society.
That's right.
Marriage is a social need, which says when you are married, the rest of the population insures you against non-interference. What does that really mean? It means you can retaliate against interference. Right. So we always think marriage is a thing that came up for personal gratification. It didn't. It came out to decide and license violence for interference in the production of the intergenerational asset. There's a reason marriages are universal, because men will fucking kill over this shit. Right. And so there's got to be a norm that says you don't do that. And there has to be a norm of we're going to retaliate if you do. I just loved how you smiled when.
But and it makes sense for your genes as well. If you can't retaliate, you have no way of protecting whether or not the next generation is yours.
Exactly. Because girls be hoes, man. I was trying to get,
So the dudes
I
screwing
can't
them.
get anything out of you fuckers today again. Bunch of stoic bastards. Anyway, so Luke, can you develop on that a little bit?
Which one?
What did you just say?
The genetics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
so-
the thing is, people assume that we've risen above that. This is why I'm
Right,
asking you the
right,
question.
no.
People
right.
assume we've risen above that. We have just identified that's the cause of our behavior. But we have that's the origin of our behavior. The fact that our behavior exists is a fact. Can we? And the answer is, if we think we can change that behavior, does that mean we think we can change the underlying cause? Basically, the facts. I don't see any evidence of it. All I see is that the more license we provide, the more men kill each other. Go ahead. So,
Yeah. No, just what I was getting at is that women can fairly confidently guarantee whether or not a child that's born of them is theirs. Right. I know we have technology now that allows surrogacy and things like that, but historically or genetically, the female knows whether or not the offspring is hers. Guys don't have that same certainty. The males don't have that same certainty. So we have to have other mechanisms to ensure our genetic survival. Marriage emerges from that because we can retaliate against intrusion on the marriage.
Well, I suggested that policy for the Constitution of making paternity tests mandatory.
I think, okay, so how can I say this without self-incrimination? So I've been accused of a questionable paternity in the past. Turns out it wasn't mine. Right. And I've been accused of paternity in questionable circumstances where it was. I'm not really sure women know, because most of this stuff happens in a late stage of a relationship, like when you're about to break up or when you're breaking up. I don't know what's going on in women at that time, whether they're trying to capture in other words, I have no idea why women become lax in that period. Is it an instinctual thing or a capture the man thing? I have no idea. But that seems to be happening in that period.
Well, it's at least both those things under the conditions of breakup, right?
Well, I just noticed that, I actually started writing this up and I felt so bad about myself that I stopped writing this.
When reduced to animal conditions, people act like animals. Like if we can get forgiven ourselves for being.
It's just how do you exit a relationship? Like I'm not a kid, right? I've had a bunch of long-term relationships, and I usually won't go from a relationship to non. I'll go from relationship to relationship. Right? That's just how it seems to work out.
We produce dependencies when we have relations. I assume men assume persistence through time.
Yes.
And we adapt to those we're around. So we forego doing things. So now we have a whole set of shit that's not done on breakup.
Right.
Right.
So, and so what I've noticed is when my mind is changing, right? Women pick up on the behavior being wrong. And every single time women use sex to recapture devotion, your attention. So I just attribute it as a natural phenomenon because they're so conscious of where your attention is.
Probably reduces violent tendency as well.
Mhm.
It's protective.
I didn't think of that. That's very smart. You, Brenda, you know, you say smart things pretty often.
Yeah.
When they have a very different, I don't know, developmental timeline than we do too. Their reproduction ends. They have a window of reproduction, right? So if they're spending that time and there's no reward or from that time, they're not reproducing from that time period, then that whole period of time was wasted. That whole investment produced nothing.
So there's an logically adversarial condition between their drive, their fertility,
Bless you.
the high cost of reproducing, and the relatively urgent need to reproduce.
But yeah, I think it makes a breakup much more costly for a woman than it does for a man.
If she perceived herself as losing. Of course, you know, you've got to be perceived as losing, right?
Right.
I'm trying to look in the mirror and give myself a chuff here, right? Because I don't get any. So, and I don't give myself any. So if I can get a chuff here, I'm gonna take it.
Well, I mean, you know, if we strip away the human stuff and just look at the animal stuff, if an animal is in a relationship, you know, is paired with another animal for a period of time and that doesn't produce offspring, that whole period of time was wasted for that animal reproductively.
Well, I mean, okay, can I play with that last definition?
Sure.
Is this the same issue as? Okay, so from the physical world's perspective, yes, right? From the adaptive world, in other words, the neural economy world, no. Right, and from my own consumption view, in other words, we're having reproducing is a form of consumption for us. In other words, we don't tend to look at it that way, but it's a form of consumption. And in fact, it is, because we're increasing consumption to burden on the environment. So we see it as a cost-benefit relationship between the cost of doing so and the consumption that it produces by the satisfaction of it. So how did you say it, Luke? You said it like, I was trying to go back to, this is an example of positiva negativa. I can't if I could rewind that, I need a little button here that I can press rewind and say, what the fuck did Luke or Brandon or myself say?
The point I was getting at is paired animals not reproducing are wasting their genetic time.
Yeah, but that's, so how, the problem is, how does that end up as? In other words, physics is true. That's why you're talking about it. We're always expecting physics, but how does that physics manifest in behavior? And I'm just trying to figure out how do we get to that behavior so we can understand it. So the individual sees it as an opportunity cost problem, right? I mean, that's really all it is that they want the satisfaction of having this. Their instincts have the satisfaction, and the universe compares it to them. Okay, I see all three now. Sorry, I got it. I just had to I got to do my job, man. How the hell?
Oh, that's good.
Luke's got there. How do I write a proof for that? Okay, I wrote a proof for it. I still think it's funny that people think we're just talking English. Oh, we're writing proofs, guys.
Right.
I have to write more proofs, and the team provides more insights. I think that's, yes, I think that's pretty, because you guys see things I don't see.
That's our benefit for all those who are watching. We all see things.
It's actually hard though, because you have to develop value neutrality enough to provide an insight that can be deconstructed.
Or you can assume the person who's talking has an insight, and if you don't see it, like, it's on you. And work backwards.
That was smart. I didn't get, and I want to make, I know that was something smart, and there was not enough sentence structure there for me to make sure which thing it was you were saying.
I get out ahead of people because I assume smart people saying smart stuff are correct. They are saying not false things. I don't try to falsify the stuff of the people that I collect. You're here so I don't have to falsify what you're saying. You do due diligence. That's your job. I tell everyone that my network's better than theirs, and then I demonstrate how much better it is by just leaning on what everyone else knows. So I don't got to know anything.
I just,
Things are decidable. And I know that
well, I
they're-
know, but I listened to you, and I would say, this is one of those things is where does the skill reside in the hierarchy of the different minds? So for me, it's highly verbalized, right? And for some people, it's highly intuitionistic, and some of us, it's pre-intuitionistic. So I don't, I mean, it's all training, right? And it's just which part of us are we training? So when I listen to you, well, most of the time, you have an intuitionistic response.
you're all persistent characters through time.
Well,
You're all persistent characters through time who base your maneuvers on principle, not whims.
yes.
Okay, easy group.
I still find the most fascinating, like you and me, once I know you, Brandon, our backgrounds would drive us to similar conclusions. When I know Luke, our basic cognitive emotional structure will drive us to similar conclusions, because I'm wired sort of like Luke is, right? And when I listen to Martin is like is basically the adult version of me, which is I was thinking Martin's just me, right? He thinks like me. The thing about Martin is he got there from the opposite side, where like Luke and I would come to the same fucking conclusion no matter what. We just approach the problem differently. Martin comes from the opposite side and got there. That's why I think it's so cool. And the other thing is that Martin's verbal acuity is up there with mine.
What?
Well,
Verbal acuity of all things.
I didn't get it.
Yeah, don't mistake verbal acuity with language acuity.
I mean, you're able to translate, you're able to speak it basically in measurements just as well as I am. There's no,
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking, well, if Martin's going to say it, it'll be at least as good, if not better than I would say it. Right. I mean, it's verbal acuity, right? It's basically your ability to render ideas in precise measurements. Right. I mean, it's just, and you're really, really good at it. But how did you get there from the opposite fucking direction? I just think that's just so goddamn weird. You know, it's fascinating.
It's not like I'm fully conscious of the process. It's just long series of things clicking into place.
Yes. And so that's what we all share, right? We all share the intertemporal, which is what Brandon keeps bringing up.
Well, we teach people, like the program, the social sciences that we teach, like that's what you're gifted, the ability to know other people, and if they're persistent through time, and if they're not, like how to nudge them so that they become that way, right? Because not nudging them leads them to make mistakes that aren't nudges anymore. And if you care about people, like nudge them into place.
I just think about how easy it was if you live in a village of like 100 people or 150 people, or you know, at most a couple of hundred. You can, I mean, I grew up in a town with 10,000 people, right? And it's a big town, right? It's agrarian. In other words, big, like in territorial area. So you knew everybody from the time they went to kindergarten to the time they graduated high school. And so nudging doesn't require any force.
Zero.
It requires a large number that anybody in your proximity which is, less than 100 people, to each push you with a feather, right? And you'll get there. But today you've got like everybody, it's like, I just feel like I'm watching people being programmed by media, right? And they're not having to adversarially compromise against individuals whose behavior they care about. In other words, there's a, right? They care about what can be influenced. And so it's like slowly driving everyone mad.
No,
mean-
they care about characters on TV.
Right. You live, I mean, it's like, we put chickens in these little boxes. I don't know if you've ever seen a farm where they raise chickens. Like, they actually can't, they're standing on this grid, so their shit can fall, right? Right. And so they live in this box, right? And the only thing they see is the chickens around them and the propaganda made by the farmer. Right. And I just like, we're getting really way too fucking close to that. Except the farmer's job is to provide you with entertainment that makes you unaware of the prison in which you're composed and the alienation you have from every chicken around you. And I'm like, I don't know, this fucking animal, we're fucking raises, what do you call it? Farm animals.
These farmers didn't even have it in them to entertain us. They were like, you guys just entertain yourselves.
You mentioned the TV distraction, the characters on the television distraction. For a lot of people nowadays, those are the only stable relations they have.
That's right.
It's the only persistent people they have in their lives is the characters written on, on
It
television.
must be really hard. Like I've watched my daughters and my son come up, and they live in this world of it. We don't think of it as a religion, but religious saturation, right? By propaganda. Well, it's essentially ideology, propaganda, whatever. And they're protected and infantilized to a degree which they're adversarially incompetent. In other words, not able to endure the normal stress of competitive, discovering a truth by competitive differences. Because if they did, of course, that means that somebody has to be more right than others, or someone more wrong than others. And of course, that would produce an inequality. So ignorance and infantilization and poverty are the only equalities that they're solving for. They just
We're
don't
trying to make it a
realize.
choice among goods. It doesn't have to be between right and wrong. We could just do what's right and decide about how good we want to be.
Yeah.
That's what we're suggesting. Everything else is worse.
You
Yeah,
might-
the religion take, we look down our nose at places in the world that enforce religion strongly, and like they cover their women from head to toe, right? I mean, that's one of the things we look down on. Whereas our religion doesn't even let you be a woman. We've destroyed the actual definition of woman. So
just undermining. Yep. Although I think it's funny because prostitution was so open and public in the Middle East through all of history that the veil started out as not being a symbol of not being a prostitute. And plus, it costs a little money. And so it just developed onward from there, this whole body thing of not being a prostitute, right? To taken to the extreme.
It was like purity spiral.
It's just a purity spiral that produces this. Whereas, I loved how, I mean, you go back in Germanic history, we like use women like we use, I don't mean this to be horrible, but it's still true. We use women like we do at dog shows, like here's the best example of the breed, right? And we use men the same way. I mean, that's what a Greek statue is. right? And so we were treating ourselves as the same creatures we had domesticated.
They're the women's purity spiraling for things like covering them whole selves, right? It gives the men who would like to do that by fiat cover to do that. That's why we don't do it. Like, that's why
Yeah,
we're
and
not
I'm like,
misogynistic while we're doing it.
but
Teach the
I-
law.
I always said that the value of your culture is the degree of restraint. In other words, maturity, responsibility, agency, right? So, I mean, I'm like, dude, I love that our women can be all fucking crazy. I don't, in other words, show how beautiful our women are because it encourages women to be beautiful. What I
Yes.
don't like is the promiscuity. I mean, if I was 16, when I was trying to get laid when I was 16, 17, 18, it was work. You had to work at it. But today it's like they have sex, they have no relationships.
They're teaching them that it's the only value they have.
Yeah. So it's just so there's a difference between it's horrible. A celebration of the quality of your livestock and failing to train your livestock. Right. I thought I was going to get more of a laugh out of that one, but I didn't.
That is just my frame of the place, the animal frame. So I just try to be an animal among them without.
But you know, it's not false. I mean,
It's not false, which is the problem with it. Problem with it. We're trying to make it not false. Excuse me, we're trying to make it false. The animal frame, what we're offering, to falsify the animal frame. But you got to do it.
the least the ability to decide, which is which, and which is good and which is bad.
Yes.
Because there's some animal frames we don't want to get rid of. I mean, they're evolutionary necessities.
Correct.
I don't think it's getting rid of them. It's like, okay, does this instinct apply in this circumstance?
Sure.
You don't want to get rid of acquisitiveness. You don't want to get a desire for sex. You don't want to get I mean, there's almost no instinct. There aren't that many instincts, really. I mean, if
Right.
I write about this early on, and I don't talk about it anymore, but it's just everything's just the prey cycle, right? I mean, the human mind is organized to produce the prey cycle like it is in every other man. And so we're just walking through iterations of the wake, sleep, prey cycle, right?
There's
And
not that many mature frames on the place. Camille Paglia describes sex as the intersection of violence and culture, which is just excellently parsimonious, but no one else like captures the space other than those who are in it to do it as an experiential thing. Like it's what their life is about. And that's a problem because we don't decide for everybody else who isn't like that.
Yeah.
And that's most people.
Yeah, but I mean, so let's go back to it. What's the purpose of religion? Self-defense. What's the purpose of education? Self-defense. What's the purpose of institutions? Right? I mean, the formal institutions. Self-defense. By producing self-defense, we eradicate sufficient number of harms that we can cooperate in large numbers to produce the returns possible from the cooperation among large numbers. But I mean, when education was first put out, it was like these ignorant people are dangerous and costly, and they can't become workers. We can't tax them. What's the purpose of the king's peace? Well, the purpose of the king's peace, common law, is to be able to ensure cooperation sufficient so we can pay for the training of men who specialize in defense of retaining the territory, right? We always position the defensive necessary as the positive virtuous. That's just.
We were trying to square the child thing earlier, right? It has to, we have to bend towards life in personal life. Like if you're a nihilist or an anti-natalist, or like you're a suicide waiting to happen, not an adult sitting at the adult table. If
Yes.
what we need to insert there is your childhood cost frame. It's like your children can be an externality on the group that houses you if you're making them pay for them.
Yes.
But we just have to steward people that can pay for their own. That's not too much to ask.
So this is where I get to the problem.
Isn't it?
What?
Isn't it so?
No, it's demonstrating not, but all those people who are producing that demonstration are criminals.
Yes, they are criminals. So the problem is, though, if you ask women to stay home, I mean, Brandon, your fucking insight here, it's like rolling around in my head, was like the women, they would love to go spend time with other women dealing with their children, right? This, I mean, and observationally, this is so true. So, right, women want the opportunity to have their nest. They want to play with other women regarding and socialize, and they want to have a little bit of self time, right? Without us, right?
Right.
Right. So, you know, if you look at it as they need these basic neural markets satisfied, it becomes very easy to say, well, you really don't want women working full time. I mean, the only reason you want a woman working full time is because she doesn't have a family yet. Because the minute you take away from that, we assume that it's a substitutable good, that mothering is a substitutable good, or that what we call religion is a substitutable good.
Those are false assumptions.
Right? It's no, and what I always get off on the libertarians, fighting is not a substitutable good. No, these aren't substitutable goods. They appear so. You can hire mercenaries. You can hire surrogate moms, right? But the reality is that they're not substitutable.
Right. Because you're creating the dependent. Those are creating the dependencies through time. Those are very short solutions to.
And you're also saying that there's no marginal difference. There's a hella marginal difference.
Okay.
Talk to the mental stability of any kid that's been homeschooled, mental and emotional stability of homeschooled children versus public school children. It's really, now we have to realize, we have to control for the fact that in homeschooled children, there are churchies and hippies, as my sister calls them, and that you have to compensate for the outlier churchies and hippies. Right, but in general, what you notice among homeschooled children is they don't lack the same self-confidence that public.
I would say that you have to lie to purport that what the public schools produce should be considered normal.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's also the difference between is trying to institutionalize in one simple process what is a multi-institutional problem. It's absolutely fine. I mean, mothers are necessary. Truth is, fathers are necessary, primarily to make sure mothers don't overdo it.
One of the things we've been discovering through, you know, the raising of our kids and whatnot is that we both didn't have this growing up, but the importance of the role the mother plays in early childhood of being the container for emotional regulation for the kids, and then in developing and teaching those kids how to do and sustain their own emotional regulation.
Yes, correct.
Whereas the father on the opposite side does the same for attention.
Yes. I never offset that well. God damn you. You know, you say smart shit, Luke.
Yeah, that's too good.
That was too good. I didn't know that one.
I mean, that's why we withdraw, right? Our attention is needed, but limited. Like, because
And it's why women use attention to hold us and keep us in the relationship and stuff like that. I mean, we're attention biased, they're emotion biased.
So Luke, we all understand the female side of that. So restate the basic equilibrium and between the sexes, and then explain what the attention means for the men.
Okay, so from the context we're working in, right?
Yes.
So where women for early childhood, they're the emotional container for kids, that they provide the container for emotional regulation.
They
Because
assist in training the emotional regulation.
right.
Yes.
Right. So basically the mother's job is to impart the capacity for emotional regulation onto their kids.
Yes.
Right. That's the mother's job. The father is the container for attention regulation for the kids. And as the kids develop, they impart the capacity for the child or the developing human to have their own ability for attention regulation, the regulation of attention.
Right. So just I'm trying to get you to disambiguate regulation of attention. Give me sometimes it's better to give a case before you give the generalization.
Sure. So
The father is trying to do what?
keep you focused on your task. Right.
Rather than
Rather than all the distractions at hand, right? I mean, we're if you look at it from the standpoint of like the father and son as the apprentice and the master, right? There's a lot of demands for the attention of the son, the male, right? We see that all over social media and stuff like that right now. But one of the things we're trying to teach them is things like self-discipline, responsibility, things like these are all attention attention regulations, or they all emerge from the regulation of attention.
correct.
So
Okay, so
that's what I'm getting at when I'm saying the father, his role is to teach the regulation of attention so that those things can emerge.
Okay, so now what I want to get out of you're doing so lovely here. So I want to get out of you what that means about the attention, your attention versus the attention of others, because this is, I think, I think this is the female problem. In other words, you're trying to get your attention, hold your attention. I'm going to call both of these things the production of mindfulness, whether
Yes.
it's male or female, right? And you're saying, okay, I'm trying to produce mindfulness. Mindfulness is the defensive position. In other words, I don't want to be interrupted by or influenced by others, right? Or my fear of the behavior of others. But so when you're saying, I'm trying to regulate my attention, but what does that mean about the attention of others? Regulating what's the relationship between learn to regulate my attention and regulating the influence of the attention of others?
So I guess my attention, both attention and emotion are influence incentives, right? They create incentives, or they produce incentives, they influence incentives, right? And going back to my model or my frame for agency is ownership over my own incentives. So attention regulation and emotional regulation are both necessary components of developing agency. There's a mindfulness part of developing agency because they allow me to assert ownership over my own incentives, right?
Executive function.
Right. And so that's where the distinction lies for me as far as my attention versus other people's attention. When I'm trying to capture other people's attention, I'm trying to influence their incentives.
And when they are trying to capture yours,
right, they're trying to
influence. And so
right. No, that's not inherently a negative unless they're asserting a ownership claim over my incentives. That's when it becomes irreciprocal.
So what is the problem with people who are not sufficiently insulated from attention, in other words, they've become attention seekers instead of attention producers. In other words, attention consumers rather than attention producers. I'm trying, because I like your tie into property, and I'm seeing if I can get that over the whole thing, is because I'm trying to convert it to productivity. In other words, so what happens if we don't teach the regulation of our own attention? We become submissive or hyper consumption of others' attention. And what happens when that happens? You see what I'm getting at, or no? I think I know.
Not yet.
Because what I see among women is that they are becoming addicted to lack of self-regulation, lack of their own attention. And so they're seeking attention, consuming it rather than producing it. In other words,
Wasting
consuming
time.
others' attention rather than producing their own.
They're
What's-
they're time wasters.
Right, they're time wasters, right?
They're being unproductive.
It's just
Being
hyperconsumption.
unproducctive.
Right.
Which would be another breach of reciprocity. Yeah.
Well, I mean, nobody doesn't like attention because it's the most stimulation the mind can achieve, the whole brain can achieve. All right, so we're wired for getting the maximum number of Christmas lights running up there. Some of us have more Christmas lights and some of us others, and some of them, I don't know how they fucking get through life. But anyway, so the attention gives us Christmas lights is very rewarding. So otherwise we wouldn't be so predisposed to socialize, which is why, of course, it works. So the problem is that, what I see among the dysfunctionality in women is the attempt to get attention for attention, and the men's attempt to get attention for sex. Is that right? And then, so you're creating an attention economy rather than an agency economy. Is that right? Or what agency are we producing? Agency in getting attention and agency in getting sex, which are both consumptions, not forms of production. So that gets back to Luke's original point, is that you're trying to get people to be producers rather than consumers.
Right.
Because that's what children are, is consumers, really, not producers. And that's what an adult is, a producer, not a consumer.
I
I
tell
was just
people
trying to
that
wrap that all together. I don't know if I did that well. But
the open and demonstrated objective consumption of one another is the bottoming out of all your capital markets. All you got
That's
left is
so
you guys.
good. Yes. If you're, say
That's
that
all they have left.
if you're,
I mean, what are they? They're returned back. You were saying prostitution was widespread earlier because it was. People call it the first.
profession.
We call it, yeah,
Profession,
the
yeah,
first
yeah.
profession, right? Those first early professions, like we disciplined them away. Being civilized was the disciplining them away. Returning to them is going backwards. We license the sale of everyone to everyone else all the time, and you're not even getting a cost exchange for it other than time.
Right.
So yeah, but you said it so macroeconomically.
Sure, yeah. The consumption of one another is the bottoming out of all your capital markets.
Correct. So when you say consumption of one another, let's complete the sentence. One another's what?
All of their value, sexual market, capital, time, attention, energy, everything we use to transform this place into something that's habitable, you are untransforming it.
And the opportunity cost is the trade between adulting and
It's the
productivity.
future. The opportunity cost is the future.
Future, exactly. And against the present consumption. So we're hyper consuming the present, offsetting the capital we're passing in the future
And the past. We're hyper consuming the past and present.
and present, and we're not, okay. Okay, now we've tied it all together. Now I feel warm and fuzzy. It's so depressing when you,
But you can tell the animals they're wrong. The first filter on the thing is like, is the animal doing it? The second one should be like, should the animal be doing it?
okay, so let's get to the hard problem then. Let's address the hard problem. We've spent 5,000 years producing what we call democracy, but what it really is a jury. It's the absence of authority, right? But which so that leaves decidability by the jury. But the jury has to demonstrate competency in order to and sort of participate in decidability. They're reversing all this right there. They're trying to eliminate our mass industrialization of responsibility. because they see responsibility as oppression, because it means they have to become adults. And they have to do so by the via negativa, which is they have to regulate their emotions, and the via positiva, which we have to regulate their attention. And I'm tying that back to loops. So the problem has been is that we have not had authority except the norm that these males as warriors, which is the optimum epistemology, right? Right, these voluntary warriors. They're trying to push responsibility down to increase their.
I like to see it as a shit test. We didn't write it down because we didn't have to. We being the warriors who were the kings, but we didn't have to because we had the ability to do it. We got to write it down now because we don't demonstrate the ability to do it. But I'm telling you that it only takes a small percentage of capable men like to get their head around it, and then it is over. So what you're doing when you demonstrate anything in public is convincing us not to lump you in with criminals. And if your speech isn't doing that, like, good luck.
So I just want to follow through because
Sure.
you jumped ahead to the end point there, which you are.
Yeah. Habit.
What?
That's all the training that I do.
But I don't get the chance to educate the audience through the incremental steps. So how do you start that? So the thing is that when the absence of authority, from whence comes decidability? It comes from norm. Okay, so the thing is, what's our norm? Our norm is the attempt to produce relative equality in sovereignty, which is, what does that mean? Responsibility, right? That's what sovereignty means. It's self-determination by self-determined means, by the production of responsibility through sovereignty and demonstrated interest, reciprocity, display, word, and deed. In other words, productivity. So the problem becomes, in the absence of that, if someone creates an artificial norm, in other words, they are sufficiently good at overwhelming our production of responsibility with some narrative, i.e. oppression, which is the purpose of this narrative, is to stop us from institutionalizing individual responsibility through the development of agency producing adult maturity, is that they, how do I say this? They've put in place a demand for authority once again. In other words, they've generated demand for the very authority our norms exist to prevent. Because when the minute you have authority, you've offshored responsibility. Right? That's the whole point of it. Right? From the individual standpoint, I want the men to take care of it. I want the warriors to take care of it. I want the elites to take care of it. I want the priests to take care of it.
Right.
You're always talking about some way of somebody taking care of it. So they're trying to offshore it. So they generate authority. And so our problem has been, is without articulating natural law, we can't show that nature, it provides the authority. The laws of the universe provide the authority. And so what we're doing is we're just writing down the authority that exists independent of man. It's just subjective discretion, because the only thing man can do different from following the laws of nature is fucking lie, cheat, and steal. Right? Or produce the top and bottom against the middle, which is the unproductive top against the unproductive, and the unproductive bottom against the productive middle. Therefore, for creating an equality through essentially enslavement of the productive. So I guess, have I made my point here? Have I done a good enough job making the point? My point is that we have to write down what the authority is, the laws of nature, so that we are free. We can impose our authority. In other words, we can rely on that authority to impose our will. I mean, in other words, out of self-defense against the criminals who are trying to create, restore authority, the parasitic authority and parasitic irresponsibility upon the people who are non-authoritarian and productive. In other words, they're voluntary and productive. I think that that's an equation. I just don't know if I got it across because I'm watching your faces and I can't tell if it got across. Okay.
Oh, case closed.
Yeah.
Crime undermines responsibility.
Crime, exactly.
And ironically, they call this denazification.
Well, I mean, this is the problem is I don't want to defend Nazis, but I mean, if you look at the policy,
I'm not saying it was actual denazification.
yeah,
I'm saying it's
no, I know.
related to
The problem is
assassinate.
that
Yeah.
what they want to do is they're claiming that that the rules we're trying to implement are oppression rather than domestication, that they're extractive rather than productive, right? You're like, well, why don't men not pay taxes and not control our violence? Well, then because we've become responsible adults. Why do you not have to be responsible adults? By controlling your impulses, regardless of what they are. Because I mean, if you want, like I always take it back to, what's the reason? Why shouldn't me and mine kill, rape, and pillage you and yours? Because I would have more fun doing that. I'd be really good at it. I enjoy it. I mean, get a bunch of guys, strong guys together, go out and rape, kill, rape, pillage, and slave, take over your stuff. I mean, that's a great industry. I mean, it's the most profitable industry in history.
They don't know their animal well enough to know that's how they feel. The men, they don't know. They would virtue signal against that. Talk about how people talk about the terrors and horrors of war, like it wasn't an enterprise.
The terrors and horrors of war are from the soldier's standpoint, are a industrial age innovation. War is a business venture throughout most of history, where men who are farmers finally have a chance to go rape, murder, steal everything that isn't fucking nailed down, so they can come back and buy their own land. That's why you go to war. It's an entrepreneurial venture. And in history, you don't lose more than 10% of your men, except under extraordinary circumstances, like when you're trying to defeat Alexander or something, right? Because there's no value in wiping out the enemy unless that's the only thing you can do, right? I mean, most of them are just farmers. So the idea that war is hell is a function of explosives. It's not necessarily. I mean, there's plenty. There's a great bit of writing from one of my ancestors about how much he loves fighting. This is pre-Napoleonic France. How much he loves fighting in war. And we think of today as startups, right? As ways to get, windfall money, but starting a war was a startup venture, right? It was a startup. And so you got a bunch of guys together who are going to go off and make a startup. I mean, as long as you could, and how do you, an army basically eats everything that isn't nailed down and things that are nailed down, everything consumable in its path, right? That's what causes the hell of war. It's not for the soldiers, it's for the populations who later starved to death because everything they had stored to live on has been consumed.
Well, the experts say that starving is coming anyway, that we're going to lose 1 billion to starvation anyway. So you might as well get out ahead of it, is what we're telling you. They're waging war against you. I tell everyone who's
the responsibility, everybody revolts against the West, what we call the Anglo invention of the modern state. The French rebelled against the Germans, the Jews, the Russians, the Ottoman, everybody's rebelling, the China, everybody has rebelled against the modern state. Well, that's wonderful, except that the modern state is the worst of all governments then, except for all the fucking others. Right? Well, this problem is the Pax Romana and the Pax Britannia or Americana is the worst condition except for all the others. So people on any condition find fault with the condition. But I mean, the choice that the world has made is to hate America because we're trying to cause domestication, right? By continuing the English invention of the modern state, which is basically rule of law. We call it democracy. That's bullshit. It's rule of law. Democracy doesn't make a fucking difference at all. I mean, just the ability to evict the idiots is valuable. The ability to approve or disapprove of raising of basically legislation, that tends to be okay. But I mean, the people's, in other words, does I want to have this out of pocket, right? That's fine. But by and large, democracy doesn't, it's just rule of law that matters. And it's rule of law, the natural law that matters. So everything else doesn't fucking matter. So we're just doing this. The problem is the world has no idea that the reason they're okay is because of that Anglo-American invention of the modern state and the trade networks that we put together. So we had almost this much globalization prior to the First World War. And then what fucking happened? Now we got this much globalization again. The problem is when you get globalization, it's like when you get the middle and ruling classes get out of hand because their interests now are almost more aligned with the international system than we are the national system. So it'd be better to go to the ancient model where there is an international system, which we call the monarchies, and the national system, which is called the government. And these two things are only vaguely related as government. And then we have the social system called the church, which today we would call education. So the problem is that all this stuff we talk about democracy and we're not very good at governing. In other words, democracies aren't very good at long-term governing. They're exceptionally good at distributing windfalls from the adoption of rule of law. And the distribution of windfalls, just watch Luke smile here. What does the distribution of windfalls produce? It produces license to not adapt to the current conditions. So my view is, yeah, Brandon, you're right. People are going to fucking starve by the goddamn billions. Why? Because we didn't tell the fucking truth. We just should I mean, I'm saying, just stay whenever we have a meeting at the fucking White House, or there's a press meeting, the basic strategy should be written on the goddamn walls in, 8-inch type. This is what we're doing. This is why. This is what will happen if we don't. Therefore, no, China, Russia, Iran, you don't get to play the return to authority game. Because the only reason you're doing that is you can extract from your own people and justify it by externalization of threats that don't exist. Because the only threat is the ability for you to extract from your own people. Now, the Communist Party is a very elaborate, what do you call it, a bunch of gangsters, mafia. The Russian elites are a mafia. I mean, and they're not even shy about it. It's their whole organizing model. And
Which is preferable to lying to it about it.
What?
Which
is actually preferable, right? I mean,
preferable to people like me.
I agree. They're not hiding behind some false promise ideology. They're just saying, this is good and we want it.
But the America then needs to fix their own policy first because it's just Zionism.
It's what?
It's just Zionism.
Well, and I know that, right? So the problem is, what's the geostrategic strategy and what are we licensing ourselves? In other words, there's no reason Marx, Pomo, woke, this shit exists here. There's no reason Zionism exists here, except that we let it. So what I always say is, people, the world is attacking the West for all the things that are not what we're doing. But we're actually trying to accomplish something geostrategically, which is basically the prevention of world wars. But we're allowing this horrible PC, Marxist PC woke feminist shit, which is the world sees correctly as degenerative and immoral, because look where we are now, right? And they're correctly rebelling against that. The problem is that licensing liberalism in the left sense, not the traditional European sense, licensing progressive leftism, liberalism is what the world is rebelling against.
It's law, not politics. Left and right is just socialism, capitalism. That's just Bolshevism, right? Zionism. You're just being lied to. You're just arguing about stuff that is always stealing from you and yours.
Right. Whereas you either have rule of law or rule of man, and you have rule of law that minimizes theft, or rule of man that maximizes theft. And it depends which fucking lie you're telling to deviate from the rule of law.
I want to reduce the accountability down to everyone's shoulders. You have the duty to ameliorate irreciprocities in your proximity. That's a duty.
Yeah, it is. The thing is that we can do it.
We can do it.
The problem is how many people can do that. The Japanese can do it.
Enough men can do
The
it.
Koreans can do it.
Enough men can do it here.
I think the Chinese could do it if they didn't have the Communist Party.
Oh yeah.
It would be hard for the Hindus, but they could do it.
I don't think that man is an animal beyond discipline. Dogs are not.
Well, the problem you get to is Middle East and Africa. Is the Middle East is essentially the production of mindfulness as a means of evasion of responsibility.
Make it a race with them. Like, look, this is the optimal way. They'll hang their people faster than we hang ours, I bet you.
You went too far too fast with that one.
Well, you give them the option. There are brutal people over there in the Middle East and Africa. Give them a decidability for those who they should remove. Think they'll decide faster than us.
In other words, the fact that we're not telling the truth is depriving them of the opportunity for self-correction.
Yeah, and then they're sending people to us. We take the best people from everywhere, as far as I can tell. America. All right. Okay.
I mean, this is the problem for Europe, right? America is the fucking brain drain. You believe how hard it is. I mean, because I've tried to raise money, and raising money in America depends on the region, but it's really it's too easy in California.
That's not good.
Well, but it seems like it's not good. But if every region of America funded trial and error as thoroughly as California, you couldn't stop this fucking place. Right?
As long as we outlaw woke, correct.
Right. And well, the problem the way I have with woke is that they have to, there's most of those companies are only a third white because they're so reliant on immigrant labor instead of building offices in foreign, but in other words, instead of creating a diaspora like the Jews do, right, or the Chinese do, they're sending white people to localities to develop businesses with people in those localities using white culture, in business culture. We are bringing the people here, and that's made it so that you can't, the culture of those people being brought here is usurping the culture that made it possible for the kind of corporation we have to exist. So I would say,
trial and error fails when you start denying error exists.
yes. Well, I mean, trial and error. I mean, if you think of it this way, is that for an entrepreneur, I have to make my companies succeed. When I start buying companies, can I say this? Is this okay? When I start buying companies, not all of them have to succeed. When I start funding companies, only a couple of them have to succeed.
That's right.
right? I mean, that sequence, I mean, I was probably aware. I got to build this company that makes enough money so that I can acquire other companies, because that's what I do,
Right.
right? And I buy companies. Because what you do, because a customer costs you a lot of money to acquire. But if you buy a company, they've got so I just do it as how many customers do they have? What's the cost of my offset of customers? And how much money will it cost me to get them to double every year like the rest of us, which is just sales. And then as you get bigger, your reputation puts a discount on their sale. Right. I mean, it's cheap. So, I mean, I just grow companies through acquisition. And the difference is that we use computers to heavily organize how business is conducted at all those levels. That wasn't able to be done before, except in militaries. I mean, Walmart is a great example of that. I mean, it's just a data processing company, right? The data processing and trucking company. But then when you get up to the point of venture capitalists, like, I'm the kind of guy, I used to invest $50,000 or $100,000 in a company, but I didn't have any go bad. Right. But I mean, I didn't exactly go on risky ventures. But what happened is I made 13, 15, 20%. Right. But if you're like out there you're investing and you're like, well, it doesn't work that way. I'll make like 1,000%. Or I'll make almost nothing. Right. So you're just playing this game of, I only need to have 1 in 10 hit. But that's actually how governments need to work.
They need to give opportunity for people to risk. On
Right.
their own, right, where they will be held accountable for the risk, of course.
And monarchies did that, and we don't. Or the monarchies acted like venture capitalists, but they did it in an era where they had hard money. Imagine what it would be like if our government acted like a venture capitalist today.
They could, and we could limit them to good. We could limit them to good.
Exactly.
investments. Good
Now, if
ones.
you say, okay, now the government can only use as tax revenue the returns on their investment, all of a sudden you've got a government that doesn't have malincentives.
You should want to give more taxes, and that you don't have a state that you want.
Correct. If you don't want to give taxes, it's because you don't agree with either direction you're going or the use of those taxes. And this is another argument for why people should be able to pay for what they prefer. I'd put my money in the judiciary and defense, and I'd let the people who care about whatever else, right? And what we'd see would happen is that people would seek rich people would seek status the way the Romans did, by funding the institutions they want the highest status. So, for all intents and purposes, I realize Gates has gone over to the stupid side, but for all intents and purposes, he is trying to achieve in health what he tried to achieve in technology. Okay. So he's basically a venture capitalist.
Tell him that people aren't computers.
Well, okay, I don't want to turn into a Gates.
That's my only criticism.
Okay, so I mean, I owe the man too much, right? I can't. I'm willing to forgive.
Do you owe him too much to tell him that?
No.
All right, great.
I just will not. I will not demonize a man for folly.
It's an honorable position. I have no
What?
problem. I don't have any problem with that.
I mean, I know how he thinks, and I know he thinks about what he's doing, and he's just wrong, but that doesn't mean he's not trying to do what he believes is the right thing.
That's literally what everyone is doing.
Not really, because they're always trying to get something from somebody, and he's not. And so
He's still imposing costs.
what?
He's still imposing costs.
Correct. But again, I know this guy, and he believes, and the people around him believe, that he can do good, and that's what he's trying to do, is build a legacy. So I'm willing to say, boy, that's fucking stupid, or no, that's a really bad idea. But okay, it's also his money.
The way he's acting is that he's worried about the incompetency around him.
Yes,
What we do is steward that competency.
yes.
All right.
So
Not performing due diligence doesn't absolve him of a crime.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that that he's personally financing a venture. And if we looked at the government as entrepreneurial rather than as administrative, we'd be in a better position than we are today. Some degree, the government is operating on insights that were produced around the turn of the last century, not this one, the last one, which led to pretty horrible things in business by the 1980s, but have been slowly correcting since then. The problem is the government hasn't gone through that correction. And that correction can happen. But my point being that, I dislike Jeff Bezos on every fucking scale, right? Like the way most people think of Gates, I think of Bezos, but I can separate that from the fact that Amazon has had a very interesting and powerful influence on the economy. So it's the same thing with almost. The only guy I really can't complain about is Musk, because I basically agree with everything he does, right? But why isn't our government act like Musk?
I think he'd like it too.
Right, he would like it too. So, I just view the whole thing as we've just got the wrong kind of government. And how did we get on this thread? I was trying to make a point.
Well, we do have
Well, the point is that the governments are not acting by trial and error, and in order to act by trial and error, you have to be able to tolerate error, and you have to have a means of distinguishing between error, corruption, error and corruption. So what I would say is that the academy and all its funding, which isn't very much money in total, right, is corrupt, right? In other words, letting scientists distribute money to scientists has turned out to be a catastrophe, compared to letting the military distribute money to scientists was extraordinarily beneficial, because the only thing the military is trying to do is maintain strategic, economic, and military technological superiority over competitors, which is, of course, all you need to do as a government. So I'm just trying to get across that our government should, that the problem is, how do you identify corruption? Well, we provide the means of identifying for corruption. So, I mean, an uncorrupt, more entrepreneurial government is necessary that produces higher returns with less corruption, so that we can distribute more benefits to the people as commons, even if we distribute less benefits to people as direct support, which is a subsidy of bad behavior. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go. That should have only taken 5 minutes.
Federated 50 startups. We should be.
I mean, most of the time we need to convert these big immigrant cities into city states, because they're spreading their cancer to their regions. Whereas what we want to do is constrain those.
How much
cities.
of that is afforded for the global companies that reside in those states, in those cities?
Ask that question differently.
How much of that corruption of the cities is afforded to by the corporations, the global corporations that reside in those cities? I'm asking because I don't know. It's not in my area.
It's more it's less direct than that.
Okay.
It's not so much that it's the globalization. It's the fact that we don't hold them accountable for externalizations.
Yeah.
And the problem with the big cities is actually immigration and debt. So they're basically spending down everything. I mean, New York is a shithole. Now, it's always been, honestly, it's always been a shithole. They were just, we kept the shitty acting people out of city centers. Right, and now we have said we're all equal, which isn't true. And we're no longer preventing people. I mean, if you look at a urban city street prior to the First World War, what you'll find is people dressed quite fashionably and appropriately and very little misbehavior. That doesn't mean that out in the periphery that we don't have people that are acting like the scumbags they really are. They absolutely are. The difference is those people were Christian, were still Christian, still had families, and still took local responsibility out there in the whatever, but that their behavior wasn't acceptable in polite society, which meant the urban core. But we're allowing dysfunctionality to spread rather than containing it so that they have incentive to adapt. It's the same thing that happened when we moved black folks from the southern farms where they were learning to adapt. They had higher marriage rates than whites. And it was profoundly safe, and moved them to cities where there's no means of regulatory pressure from social pressures, and where they have no means of self-sustenance, self-provisioning. So it's just Luke's insight, which is tolerance versus forbearance. Which fucking thing are you doing? What's the negative version of tolerance? It's undermining, right? In other words, if I can tolerate, how do you put it? If I can tolerate something, I'm evading a cost. If I forbear it, how do you say it?
Yeah, forbearance is an investment.
I'm making an investment.
Yes.
Tolerance is I'm
The
evading
externalization of a cost,
the current cost, and then I can undermine.
Yeah.
Right.
which
And
is
so
introducing a cost.
introducing a cost. And so the problem is that we've gone from forbearance, which is all of us bearing the cost of continuous domestication of one each other, to tolerance, which is allowing the externalization of cost, to undermining, which allows unfit people to externalize their cost on fit people. So you go from universal virtue to middle class tax evasion to underclass undermining.
Yep.
I don't know if you've.
And then the cultural norms emerge from that to justify those behaviors.
Correct. I like government
and glorify them.
You know, it's like, so if we're all equal, government's job is to domesticate people, thereby protecting good people from bad and reducing the number of bad people. I mean, it's not really fucking complicated. I mean, education primarily is a means of cost reduction, because untoward people are a very costly problem for society. If you look at the damage caused by the kind of people that are in prison, it's extraordinary. And so you say, well, the prisons are expensive. Compared to fucking what? Compared to the damage they do if they're not in prison?
Compared to executing them.
So, what?
Compared to executing them.
Compared to executing them. And executing them is the cheapest fucking thing you can do.
Yes.
It turns out to be excellent for the gene pool when you kill a lot of those people. As I said, we don't kill enough people.
We could get out ahead of the random equilibration coming from starving by starting with the criminals.
Yes.
Just start at the top with the criminals. The people are going to die anyway. Make it the bad people.
Okay, so we have to separate the three kinds of criminals.
Yes. Because some should be held accountable.
Right.
More accountable than others.
If you mean acts of predation, right? That's really the issue, right? there are crimes of stupidity. Right? You know, just
If we don't forgive those, we're in trouble.
you mean they're just stupid, right? I mean, stupid, impulsive, you know, you know. I was like, it's like I sit and watch courtroom. I mean, this is my thing, right? Sit and watch courtrooms when I was a kid, and I said they were watching them, and you watch these guys get in trouble for having a fight. I'm like, why are they here? Nobody died. They both wanted to do it, right? You know, and you're like, you're disturbing the peace. I'm not sure that's what happened. Two guys got in a fight. A bunch of people thought it was fun to watch, right? Nobody got killed, right? Nobody got maimed,
Well,
right?
you know, they maintained the peace.
Well, they maintained the peace. They prevent, because when you have a fight like that, you know, people forget you're educating every other man in there, or woman for that matter, to watch what he or she says, because that's exposing the limit. Now, if you got you get the other person down and you're and I'm not going to use the N word, but that's what we call it, and you're kicking the guy in the head or beating him once he's down, that's attempted murder, right? But if you're disciplining another person, which is what we call this kind of dueling, because we don't think of it, we sort of ritualized fighting in the West, right? Boxing is a great example of ritualized fighting, but the duel is a ritualized fighting. So we've sort of ritualized this judicial activity between sovereign men. And so the only thing you can't do is like a very powerful, like a colonel can't go beat up on a private, right? And a soldier can't beat up on an officer can't beat up on a citizen, right? I mean, these are
Proportionality.
these are violations of the proportionality. I mean, the principle in a duel is the resolution of status conflicts within limits of proportionality. So that's why you see men being dug in a hole, fighting from a hole up waist deep, and women get to run around the hole, and she's got a bag of rocks, right? And so our ancestors tried to create proportionality, you know, it's because that's what a status conflict is.
So like in the office, right, give citizen the bag of rocks.
Well, I mean, you're also, the way you did it, you disciplined your own. It's like discipline your own family, right? You know, I'm not, you know, the officers will discipline the officer, the common folk will discipline the common folk, and that's how we avoid interclass conflict. But it's like, you'll discipline your kid so I don't have to. But if you don't discipline your kid, I'm going to fucking discipline you. And you don't want me to discipline you, so you're going to discipline your kid. And
Right.
everyone's going to be fucking happy. It's this myth of,
Your whole family's not allowed here. Is the type of stuff
Yeah,
that happens when
yes.
you start failing to discipline your own.
I forgot what thread we were on.
You're talking about fights going to court, which is a waste of the judge's time and the jury.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Well, like,
Yeah,
all right,
it's
well,
the
the
idea
cost
that
in there is
people need the ability to correct one another, right? Because whenever they appeal to an institution, the institution is less informed than the people there. And so this is the problem the court has, is the court isn't a perfect observer, right?
no, they're not.
Right. And so you're forgetting that the court's decidability is limited to, and it doesn't accept, it's unlike the church or the duel. And the church said, well, that's just immoral. Right. So the courts were property, the church morality, and the dual status. And these are great ways of dividing up the problem. Because if I know Luke's going to kick my ass if I get out of line, I'm going to be afraid of Luke. He's bigger than me. Right. And moreover, I'm going to be afraid of talking shit about people who have brothers or uncles, because everybody's got the crazy uncle. And that's the value of crazy uncles. Is the crazy uncle is the guy that goes over and says, because he's too crazy to have a family.
Right.
Right? But he's not too crazy to go 2 towns over and kick the fucking shit out of, probably bring guys with him and kick the fucking shit out of these guys, because that's his status. His status is an enforcer for the family. Crazy uncles are really valuable. Can you ever think of how much fun it would be to be the crazy uncle? That'd be a lot of fun. Anyway, so what happens? Go.
Oh, we're getting towards the three classifications of criminals, right? That's what we're,
Thank you.
the
I was like, it'll come to me if I talk for.
the stupidity, the opportunity, and the predatory.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's also like, okay, selling pot, right, and getting arrested for it is essentially a moral crime. That's all, right? It's a moral crime. The problem is a moral crime for money. It's baiting into hazard. You're baiting people into a hazard. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we sell alcohol, we sell pot. Turns out that pot's probably better than alcohol. So, plus it decreases the fertility of the people who smoke a lot of it. So what the fuck, right? So I don't know. I have a problem with putting with that. I don't have a problem with preventing consumption and displays of incompetence in public. But if you want to get high at home, I mean, I like my pot brownies fine. I only can do that every couple of years, but I like a little vacation.
The best frame on the war against drugs is a war on consciousness.
Correct.
And adults should be able, we shouldn't prescribe pain pills for pain. It's like, how about just deal with the pain? Like there's a certain amount that you're a person, you go through pain, tough luck being you don't get access to illicit drugs.
But I mean,
That's the short-term thing again. That's everyone being on the, how I feel right now matters.
Right.
But I mean, if we take away socialization and community and real church and we teach propaganda and equality and all this other crap, we're basically making people go crazy.
They will find refuge in drugs, and they do. It's an epidemic around here, northern Massachusetts.
Really?
The heroin use around here, it's terrible. It's terrible. People find love in it. That's what they want.
Yes.
All right, well, it's a shitty way to get love.
Yeah.
Well, I heard they just want to feel normal for a while.
Yes. Yeah, that's the right way of putting it, isn't it?
They want to
It's not that
not
they
care
wanna
that they
feel
don't
good.
feel normal.
It's they want to feel normal.
Mhm.
They want to feel how the average person feels. There's a great it's somewhere in I guess it's Pakistan. There's a group that gives ordinary Western food and things like that and music to tribal people. So they invite a bunch of tribal people, and they've got a group now that's fairly consistent. You know what channel I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's like in the recommendations for everyone, I think.
Yes.
But
And I love watching it because you realize, like there's this old guy, right? This old guy who's got a really nice beard and a turban and whatever. And I'm like, I just love this guy, right? Because of his worldview, right? He's a very simple guy, very moral guy, very simple guy, very honest guy. I would just think that guy's a great guy. You get the next guy on, and he's like he's ties everything to religion, right? Like God would have this and whatever. He's just pretending he's smarter than he is, right? I mean, right? And so that's the way he gets his self-confidence, right? And so you go through, but I love these simplicity things because you see in a reduced form the characterizations of how we express things with more words and more pseudoscience and more crap. But I couldn't live with those people. But I mean, you're like, well, we have roti and this and whatever and rice, and they just talk about how their simple life is. But they don't. When you see people in simple parts of the world, as long as they're not starving, the social structure they live in is it produces mindfulness. And the absence of social structure inhibits it. And what is social structure? It's limits, right? I mean, it's just limits. We tend to think of it in the positiva. You do this. Well, you do that to limit that. I mean, we always state the negativa as a positiva. Because we're always more interested in how to get the cheese than how cheese is gotten, right? Or what happens if we don't get cheese. So, in any event, so to tie this back together, why are we prosecuting people in criminal court for manners, basically bad manners, immoral crimes? There's another thing where it's like crime with stupidity. You're a kid and you take the candy bar out of the fucking supermarket because you just can't overwhelm your impulse to take the fucking candy bar. That's just a thing, right? You get up to where you get white collar crimes. I mean, we had to prosecute a lot of this when I was young, which is people who like steal money from cash registers and minor tax evasion and stuff like that. Those are little crimes. So there's like these moral crimes, procedural crimes like jaywalking, and there's like impulse crimes, right? That they're things that you need to discipline people for, but unless they're serial, they're not really a problem. But then you get crimes of predation, which are, anytime you're violating, you're breaking into a property, you're robbing someone. I mean, those things, the 3 strikes thing is maybe enough, but we don't apply that to any, stealing cars. I mean, the fact that in Seattle, you have to steal 9 cars, you got to be caught stealing 9 cars before you do a day of jail time. Why?
That's a lot of cars. You are an
No,
expert.
you got to understand. If you've been caught 9 times,
I know you're an expert thief.
you've stolen 100 cars.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right, or easily.
Easily. You're
So
great. You're a great car thief if you
You're-
get caught 9 times. Yeah, great one.
you're either incredibly fucking stupid.
Yeah, or that.
So it was like common knowledge that, what was happening back in the day is that they were stealing cars, chopping them up, and then sending the parts offshore to the port, and then shipping them back in for resale.
Super efficient.
Right. And we knew what they were doing. And of course, they don't steal cars. They were stealing like a few cars because people specifically want them. But most of the time, they're just stealing like Corollas because of the thing that they steal whatever needs the most parts.
Yes.
Because it's just the volume business.
Mhm.
So, I mean, and so these kids are just in the business of, it's a cost of doing business to get arrested 9 times. But if you haven't been, you can have stolen 100 cars by the time you've been caught the 9th time. And by then, you look, well, okay, it's an opportunity cost. Now you can move on to bigger and better things.
That's a criminal training program.
It's a criminal training program, right? I mean, tolerance is criminal training. They say, well, you're putting people in places where they learn when you put them in the system, they're learning how to be better criminals. Well, then what are you doing wrong in organizing this particular system? We know that the way we organize prisoners is bad. We know it's bad, right? We just seem to be stuck on doing it this way because we can't think of another way of doing it when there's a couple of other ways. One of the ways is the Eastern model where prison is so fucking horrible, you will do anything necessary to avoid it. The other one is that prison is basically getting captured by a priesthood who's retraining you every fucking day, right? That's the other one. And then there are the people like, I love Scott Adams has come out with this, who are broken and there's nothing you can do to fix them. And they need to go away. Now, if we don't want to get back in the business of hanging people, we should get back in the business of hanging people. We have a lot of desert out there that is a great place for work camps. And work camps are very, with barracks, are very good places for people who are otherwise unsalvageable. And they're happy to kill each other off in large numbers, so we don't have to worry about them. So I mean, there's plenty of things we could do, but the most of this is coming. This bad behavior is coming from women. There's women holding out, mothers' expectation that everybody can be free. Where it's like the moms of serial killers never believe their kids done it, and fathers are always like, "Yeah, fucking hang them."
Right. An overabundance of restraint.
Yeah. All right. So those 3 crimes. I guess that was the last thing. We've gone 2 hours now. Wow, there's a lot of good stuff in this conversation today. We got to Luke's got this wonderful, endlessly beneficial tolerance, forbearance thing, but I really like undermining. I like a three points make a line.
Yeah.
I like undermining tolerance, and it's harder to escape that line.
Yep.
It's harder to escape it. 3 kinds of criminality.
Luke talks about functional people.
What does that mean?
People who undermine, they're not functional for the rest of us. They're a non-functional unit, right? Well, that's what we're describing in the arena of crime. Going through all these crimes, like if you can't be retrained to be put back in your community or put into another community, like what do you suppose we ought to do with you? There's a question for the rest of us. All right, well, it's cheapest to put people down that can't conform.
I was just.
And you're paying for your own.
Yes.
Right? It's not like they can't escape prison camps.
I was just in a courtroom recently. Right? I'm standing with this black guy, right? Big guy, fucking gorilla, right? Who, when he was 20 or 19, probably was a fucking danger to society. Right? But he's like out there trying to do right. He's 40. He's trying to do right. And so, but what was his problem? His problem was insufficient discipline. Some guy, like, I wanted to go to military school. I like that order. But some kids need military school. Some kids do just great in this. What's the do whatever you want nursery school? What's an M? Whatever.
Montessori.
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 So some of my kid in Montessori, he couldn't stand it because too much chaos. But other kids do fine in that chaos. So the problem is we have this one size fits all. Where I actually like the existence of a Montessori. So there's people there who do well on that. But we don't have the military.
Right.
Because military is where those of us who want order need to be. Or at least priestly. I mean, I did the same thing in Catholic Church back when we had Catholic school, right? It's very orderly, but it was under moral force rather than military force. And if you have those choices, a kid can just sort into whatever environment it's most suitable for his intuitions. And I'm like, I know how to make inner city black kids great. It's to make them feel fucking safe. How do you make kids safe who have too much, who are less neotenous and have more more aggressive growth curves? You put them in physical environments with rituals so that the rituals become the impulse.
Yes.
Right. It's the same thing for Catholic schools. Like they put you in all these goddamn rituals so that with all these memes, and you chant memes and perform rituals until your instinct is the ritual. I mean, Jesus, Brandon teaches dogs. What's the fucking difference? There isn't any. Except you can understand more words than a dog can. And you've got
That's what I'm trying to, like, you can teach a dog to act in correspondence with a set of rules. Like if you can't do it with people, there's a problem with your people or your trainers. It's not the being itself. Like the being has all the tools.
And so I think the problem is when the panic of mothers has no choice. So this idea of a universal school system, rather than school systems with different methods that handle different intuitions, that imbue training by different means. Like there's just kids that can't go to Montessori school.
Right.
There's kids that can't go to to ordinary school. There's kids that can't go to church school, and there's kids that need military school. Military school will fucking work. And if you watch boys react to men's voices versus women's. It's fucking hysterical. It's fucking autonomic.
You can do the same with dogs.
Well,
You can do the same with dogs.
dogs, yes.
Yeah.
It's autonomic. So just, and I would like it because I just like the order. But I realize that there's kids that don't want that order. They like the chaotic stimulation of social signaling and emotion, whatever. And they find that rewarding because they live in an empathizing world. They're not very dominant, right? Right. My kid, my kid was a problem because he was like in the big person, he's a big kid, or is a big kid. And if you got out of line with him, he'd correct you physically. It wasn't like to hurt you, it was to make you stop. So if you got out, if you were standing in line with him and you were loud or rude or whatever, he might take care of the problem. And this is like when he's tiny, right? Just preschool. So then we finally get into kindergarten. So the problem is we put him in Montessori, he couldn't stand it because it's too much chaos. And then we put him in regular school and it's like, okay, he needs order. My daughters express the same need for order differently. So, I mean, give kids who want order, give kids who want chaos, and stop trying to have one size fits all. That only works for caftans for super fat chicks. Come on. I was trying to get, I built up to that over about 3 or 4 seconds and nobody reacted. And so
Doesn't work for them either.
All right, guys. So we're at 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Yep.
It's a lot of fun. Can I publish this talk? Yeah.
I think so.
Well,
I think so.
okay.
Yeah.
Love you guys. Thanks you for this happening again. Sorry for being late. Had an allergy thing, kept me awake till 4 a.m. So and I forgot to set my alarm. All right.
So
Love
is
you.
that what we're calling her?
Kill the record.
Kill the record.
Yeah.